Our scripture for today is taken from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. Jesus stills a storm. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with them. A great windstorm arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion, and they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" May the Lord add his blessing to the reading and hearing of his holy word.
I'm going to be honest with you this morning. I have another sermon that I'm really excited to be able to preach. And not that I don't look forward to preaching every sermon, I don't want you to think that, but with some sermons you can feel that the Holy Spirit is really talking to you that week. You just know that He is speaking loud and clear to you. And this is 2 weeks in a row that I felt God saying, "Okay, preach this. You've got to preach this. Somebody needs to hear this." So 2 weeks in a row, God really speaking to me. Next week is probably going to be a snooze fest. I'm being honest with you. I'm just telling you right now. You're probably going to fall asleep next week during church. But that's okay because we have this week. And I think that God has something to tell you today. I really do. So I'm asking you to turn those hearing aids up. Shut those phones off. If you haven't shut them off like Dan has already, shut yours off now. No playing hangman. Do whatever you do during this sermon to just pay attention and hear what God wants to say to you, because He wants to talk specifically to you this morning. So we're going to get to it. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for today, for this moment, for this time, God. God, just keep us attentive, God. Speak to us through your Spirit. Speak through me, God, and allow this just to touch those who need to hear you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Did my mic?
That came.
It's clipping for some reason. I found the other one. It's right here. I don't know why I couldn't look there before. Oh, look at this. It's just one side. This is going to fall off during the middle of the sermon, so we're going to try this. I've never done one before.
Check 1, 2. Is that too loud? No. That is too loud. How's that? No? Check 1, 2.
Let's see if this one works. Oh, this is nice. This feels like a bug is flying right through the So, in our scripture today, we heard a story that if you've probably ever been to Sunday school as a kid, you have heard before, because it's one of those neat stories, one of those interesting stories. And Jesus has been teaching all day, and when it gets towards the end of the day, he says to his disciples, "Hey, let's hop in a boat, let's go to the other side of the lake." And the lake happens to be the Sea of Galilee. That's what it was named. So they all hop in a boat, they set off across the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus is understandably tired because he's been preaching all day, telling them parables and stuff like that. So what does he decide to do? Decides to catch a nap. Sundays are generally the only day in which pastors nap on, but I like my Sunday naps. I do, because after you preach, you're just kind of worn out and you just want to rest for the rest of the day. So Jesus grabs a pillow, goes to the stern of the boat, and takes a big old nap. And I told you a couple weeks ago that Jesus knew how important rest was. And this is just one more example of that. You think, well, didn't Jesus have something more important, more pressing that he could have been doing? No, at that moment in time, rest was the number one thing that he needed to do to maintain his physical and spiritual health. So he snuggles in for a big old nap, and while he is snoozing away, a big storm comes out of nowhere. And they refer to us as a squall. So you know it's a big storm with lots of winds. The wind creates a bunch of waves, and the boat is rocking around, and now the storm has gotten so bad that waves are actually cresting over top of the boat, and water is inside the boat that they're bailing out. And it's the point that it's nearly swamped, which means they're probably going to drown soon. It's probably what's going to happen, because if your boat goes under in a storm like this, you're probably going to go under too. So the disciples are working the boat, and they're working the rigging and the sails and whatever else they have in an attempt to get through the storm. And Jesus, how is Jesus helping at this moment in time? Did you catch what he's doing? What's he doing? He's sleeping. He is still asleep. There is a storm that is so bad that is coming up over the side. The boat is getting swamped. The disciples are about to die. And Jesus is sleeping. Jesus is still asleep. And you think, how crazy is that? How absolutely crazy is that? So you start to think about the options. You think about, how could Jesus possibly be sleeping during this time, during this moment of crisis? How in the world could he possibly be asleep? And you start to work through a couple of the options, and I can only come up with two good possible scenarios. Option number one is that he is so exhausted that he could sleep through anything. You've ever been that exhausted? You ever been so exhausted that you just feel like you could go out and, World War III could happen right outside your house and you weren't waking up for it? Anybody ever been like that before? Is that a daily thing that happens? Yes. Yeah, high schoolers are amazing at that. Absolutely amazing at that. But I personally have experienced the effects of that deep exhaustion by living with my wife, from her being part of my life. Because she actually would reach a point in time of exhaustion that her body would say, okay, get up, and her mind would be like, oh, no, we are not doing this. And you can't understand what I mean until I read to you some of the things that she has done in her sleep. Because what happened is when we were newlyweds and we got married, we moved into an apartment in Clarion. She was still a senior in college, and I was going to seminary. I didn't know what I was in for. I had absolutely no idea until I started experiencing these things in the middle of the night, and I started to keep a diary and write them down because I never wanted to forget them again. Terry was in college, she was student teaching at the same time, and she had a job. So she was reaching a point of exhaustion where her body said get up, but her mind said no, we're not getting up. The first time it happened was in the middle of the night, and she gets up out of bed, turns on the light. I'm squinting my eyes from the light, I'm wondering what's going on, and she looks at me and she says, "Are you going to help me?" And I said, "What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about." And she looks at me again with those eyes, and more forcefully this time, and she says, "Are you going to help me?" And I'm thinking, I'll do whatever you say, lady. Absolutely, because I don't want to be on the wrong side of that. I do not. But I have no idea what you're talking about. Well, I just woke up, and I said, "I'm sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about." And she stands there for a moment, she says, "It's not time for me to get out of bed yet." And she shuts off the light, she climbs in bed, and is immediately snoring. Not like snoring in an old man sort of way, but in a deep, I know you're asleep sort of way. And she wouldn't talk to me. She wouldn't answer me. I said, what just happened? What? I don't even understand what's going on right now. That was the first time that I experienced it. But every time she would get to the point of exhausting herself, we would experience more and more of these episodes. One night I climbed over Terry to get in the bed, and she did it again. And she said, "That's smart." And I replied, "What's smart?" And she says, "Getting in line early is smart." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Joe, he's smart for getting in line early." And I thought, I'm going to see if she can respond to me. So I said, "Well, whose idea was it?" And she said, "Donna's." And she rolls back over and goes to sleep. She won't talk to me anymore. I don't know who Joe and Donna were. And I asked her the next day, she had no idea who Joe and Donna were. But they're smart people because they got in line early. There's one time in the middle of the night, I can't tell you a couple of them because we're in church. If you want to know outside, I'll tell you during the picnic. Just another reason to stay for the picnic. But let me tell you this one. One time she gets out of bed and she starts rooting through all of the pants in the room. Like she's literally walking around the room, getting all the pants out and reaching her hands into the pocket, digging through every pair of pants. And I thought, what is so important in the middle of the night that you've got to search every single pair of pants to see if you left it in the pocket? So I look up at her and I say, "What are you doing?" And she looks at me like I'm the dumbest man on the face of the planet. And she responds, "I'm looking for 4 circles. Then she gets back in bed and goes to sleep. She reached a point of exhaustion. A point of exhaustion where her body, her mind said, I don't care what's going on, don't get up. Her body was like, yeah, let's do this. Her mind's like, no, absolutely not. And I feel like this is one of the only 2 options of Jesus. He reached a point of exhaustion that they're all about to die. And he's like, I feel the rocking. That's so nice. I mean, this is one of the possibilities. But I don't think it's very likely, because I preached on the fact that rest is important. And if you read through Scripture, the New Testament, you will see multiple times when Jesus goes to rest. Either goes off by himself to take a rest or takes a nap on a boat. I mean, Jesus knew the importance of rest. So he didn't get to the point that he was so exhausted that he wouldn't wake up. So we're at the other option. And this option seems a little bit crazy to us. I think that's why we don't think it at first. But the other option is that he was actually resting peacefully. He was resting peacefully in the middle of a storm. Can you do that? That seems a little silly. I mean, how in the world could someone rest peacefully while they're in the middle of a storm? Well, let me, first of all, remind you of a few things that maybe you have forgotten. He is Jesus. You remember that? He is Jesus, which means he's the Son of God, which means he is God himself, which means he is part of the Holy Trinity. So, first of all, he is all-knowing, and certainly knew that the storm was coming, but he also knew that in the end everything was going to be okay, so there's really nothing to worry about. Second of all things in the universe were made through him. We learn about that in John, so he is Lord over all things, including the weather. So he knows that when it comes time, he can do whatever he wants with the weather. And third, he is the Son of God, a beloved child of God, who has a job to accomplish here on the earth, and he knows that God is not going to let something happen to him before that takes place. Fourth, he comes from heaven. So if something did happen to him where he was going to die, guess what? Death isn't something that he fears. Why? Because he's already been in heaven. He knows how amazingly awesome it is. So death is actually something for him to look forward to. So you add all these things up, and then you ask, is it possible to be at peace in the middle of a storm? Well, the answer is yeah, absolutely. If you are Jesus and know the things that Jesus knows. Do you know who wasn't at peace in the middle of the storm? The disciples. Yeah, everybody else. The disciples. Absolutely. They are battling to stay afloat and to stay alive. They're bailing the boat. It looks like they're losing the battle. So they finally decide to go and wake up Jesus. And they don't go and wake him up with confidence like he's going to fix this. They wake him up in a panic like, we're all going to die. We are all going to die. Because what do they say? They grab him by his robe, they shake him a little bit, and they say, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Don't you care if we drown? And those are the words of men who are confident in the Son of God who happens to be traveling with them. Those are the words of men, are not the words of men who are calmly asking for Jesus to help. Those are the desperate words of men who have become overwhelmed with fear when they have lost their hope. And it's as if they've completely forgotten who they're traveling with. I mean, how do you not understand who this guy is? So they wake Jesus up, and Jesus stands up in the boat, and he just says this. He says, Quiet, be still. The waves end. The wind ends. The storm leaves. Why? Because he's Jesus. Because he is Jesus, the Lord of all creation. Of course it's going to listen to him. And Jesus looks at his disciples and he says, Why are you so afraid? Why do you have such little faith? I mean, I just don't even understand. Why are you so afraid? Why do you still have no faith? And he's asking them this question because they were facing a literal storm and didn't know what to do when Jesus is sitting right there. When he's sitting right there. And you think, okay, well, that's great for them. I've never been in a boat in a storm about to drown. How does that apply? Well, it applies because this may be a literal storm for them, but we all experience figurative storms during our lives. Squalls, moments when the world just comes at us and we feel threatened, like we're not going to be able to stand up under this, like our boat is going to sink, like we are going to become overwhelmed. We have moments where things in our life hit us out of nowhere. And we weren't expecting it, and we weren't prepared for it. And you just feel like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. Life comes at you like that. And in a moment's notice, boom, things can change. They can be completely different. This past week, Terry and I took the kids to Frisbee Golf at Sugar Creek Park over on the way to Kittanning. And it's a really nice Frisbee golf course that takes you down into the woods, like way far down into the woods as you're dodging the trees and stuff to get your Frisbee to go into the hole. So we went to that. We were having a great time, a good time down there. Gentle breeze blowing. The weather was perfect. The kids actually weren't fighting for a change. It was just a very fun time. And we're at hole, I don't remember what hole, it was like hole 6 or 7 or 8, somewhere in there. We didn't realize it was 18 holes. But we were so almost finishing up the first section. And we'd thrown the Frisbee, so the girls went ahead to get the Frisbees, and Terry said, I think I have a bug in my eye. So I stopped to check, and Caleb stopped next to me, and I looked in Terry's eyeball, there was a bug. I got the bug out of her eyeball, and we turned to walk up to where the girls are, and when we do that, we hear an unmistakable sound of a branch breaking. You just hear that crack, and you know what it is. So I duck my head down and take a step back, and Caleb throws his arms up to cover his head, and Terry thinks I better check and see where this branch is coming from to see if we need to get out of the way. So she looks up, and the second that she looks up, this branch hits her right in the face, right in the head, scrapes right down the side of her body, and as it's doing that, and Caleb throws his arms up, the branch comes down and nails him right in his wrist. Caleb, you can tell he's physically hurt, so I grab him and pull him towards me, and I look over at Terry, and she's still on her feet. Should have been a boxer. I don't know how you do something like that. And she's got a little bit of glazed look in her eyes, but she's asking how Caleb is, so I know that she's okay. So I'm trying to get everybody calmed down, get the girls calmed down, get Leah calmed down. Oh my Lord, that takes forever. And make sure Terry's okay and Caleb's okay. And then I look down on the ground, and what I see amazes me. This branch, it was between 10 and 15 feet long. It was big. And at the end of it, it was between 4 to 5 inches thick. And when this fell down, part of the thicker section hit Caleb in the wrist, and where it started to thin out with the branches and stuff, that's what nailed Terry in the face and then came down the side. But it started to sink in, and I thought, if we were literally 1 foot further ahead down the path, one of us probably would have died. You don't get hit in the head from a branch that thick that fell from 30 feet up in the air right in front of us, And then when you think, that almost killed us, that could hurt, and you're trying to pull yourself back together because 2 of us are hurt, and we still have to find our way out of the woods. We're in the middle of the woods, but then you start to have all of the scenarios go through your head, and you think, what if it did kill us? What would the other ones do? What if someone was injured severely? What if we were in the middle of the woods? What if it was going to take time for us to hike back up out of here? What if Terry was knocked out? What am I supposed to do then? Because you watch a lot of movies, what do? You just throw the guy on your back and you hike up and out of the woods. I'm sorry, I don't know if you've ever tried to carry another adult human being. It looks good in the movies, but that's because they do it from literally 5 feet before they pass out. But in editing, they make it look a lot further. It is not an easy thing to do. So I can get the kids out of there, but I don't know what I'm going to do if Terry's passed out, or worse. What are they going to do if I'm passed out? They need a pickup truck to get me out of the woods. All of them are not carrying me. And your mind starts to race with all those different possibilities, the different scenarios. And where you come to at the end is, it is a terrible and terrifying thought, knowing that life is so fragile, absolutely so fragile, and at any moment in time, any moment, life could end for you or for those that you love, and there is nothing that you can do about it. And that particular storm has hit many people in their lives, just come out of nowhere. But death isn't the only storm that we face. It's just one of the many storms that we face. Many times we find ourselves battling things just as scary and just as overwhelming. Things that just came out of nowhere and turn our lives upside down on their head. Life has a way of having these squalls just come on us. And although we're not physically in danger, the emotional pain that we face is just as overwhelming as any sort of physical pain. In 1633, Rembrandt painted The Storm on the Sea of Galilee. Is that still up here? That's Rembrandt's painting from 1633, Storm on the Sea of Galilee. And it shows what he envisioned this would have looked like during this story, during this ordeal. And he did it from a modern perspective. So that's a modern fishing boat that the people of this time would have been familiar with. And if you look at your bulletin, if you still have one and I did not steal it, this picture that's on there, that's a close-up. That's a close-up of some of the people that were on the boat and what Rembrandt imagined these people would look like. And if you look at that picture, you can see the boat battling the waves, and you have people that are working hard. In the front left, you can't see it very well, but you can see in this picture there's people on the rigging, working the rigging, trying to take care of it. You see that there's someone at the helm. You see that there's, if you look close, the closest one to you, there's a guy puking over the side of the boat. That would be me, definitely, because I'm not making it through those waves. But then there's another one in the back that's kind of cowering in terror who looks like he's lost all hope. And then there are two guys yelling at Jesus, getting ready to grab his robe, just like they did in the story. And then right in the front, you see a guy holding onto a rope, holding onto his hat to make sure his hat doesn't fly off, and he's staring straight ahead. And the point of that guy is to stare straight into your eyes when you view that painting and ask you, which one are you? Which one are you? In this painting, which one are you? This scene shows the turmoil of life when it comes crashing down upon us. And to answer the question of which one you are in this painting, you have to think about how you handle these storms in your life. When life comes at you fiercely, how do you handle that? Are you the one working the rigging, trusting on your own strength because you've got this, you can get through this, you are strong enough? Are you the one that is puking over the side of the boat, just completely overwhelmed, not knowing what to do? Are you the one who's standing in the back doing nothing because you've lost all hope? You just think, I don't even know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. There's just nothing to do. Are you the one that is grabbing Jesus' robe and shouting, don't you care if we drown? Are you that one? Which one are you? The truth is that we all take turns being each of these people. I really feel like during crises, we become all of these people during different stages. And honestly, no matter which one of these people you choose to be, they will all suffer the same fate. You know what that fate is? You're going to drown. You're going to drown. And we, in our lives, when we face these things, we're going to drown for the same reason that the disciples were going to drown. And do you know what the reason was that the disciples were about to drown? Do you understand in the story the reason why their boat was about to sink? What was the reason? What was the reason? They forgot who was in the boat. They forgot who was in the boat with them until the very last second. Jesus was in the boat the whole time. He was in the boat the whole time. He had never left. Guess what? Jesus was in the boat when the storm was approaching. They could have woken him up then, right? Jesus was in the boat when the storm first started to hit. They could have woken him up then. Jesus was in the boat when the storm started getting bad. They could have woken him up then. And yes, Jesus was in the boat when the boat became swampy. They were about to die. And when did they wake him up? Very last thing. When they were about to die. When the situation became desperate. And the only reason that the situation became desperate was because they forgot who was in the boat with them. They forgot who was in the boat. Because if they remembered who was in the boat, what would they have done early on in this scenario? Woken him up. I mean, it just makes sense. Here comes a big storm. Jesus is in the boat. Maybe we should wake him up. That would have been a good idea. That would have been the first thing that would come to mind if you remember Jesus was in the boat and if you remembered who he was, the Lord of all creation. The Lord of all creation. But they took him for granted. And they didn't get him involved until the very end. And if you look closely at that picture, there's one guy in the picture who we didn't talk about, the guy who tends to get overlooked. There was one man who just kind of blends in, and he purposefully blends in. And he's the man right in the center, right in front of Jesus, who is quietly kneeling with his hands bowed in prayer, And if you looked at the original, which you can't because it's been stolen since back in the 90s, you would actually see that there was a little halo painted above his head to let you know that is the man that we are supposed to be. The one who remembers that Jesus is in the boat, the one who is there quietly praying because they know from the very beginning that the Lord of heaven and earth can fix whatever it is that we have going on. You don't need to live in fear, folks. You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to struggle through your own strength. You don't need to feel overwhelmed. You don't need to feel without hope. You don't need to do any of these things if you honestly live your life constantly reminding yourself from the very beginning who is in the boat. Who is in the boat? Because if you remember he's there, then right from the get-go, when you see that storm in the distance coming towards you, you can wake him up and get him involved. And here's the thing, we don't remember to do that, and we don't do that. And if you are far into this journey, if you are deep into this storm, guess what you still have time to do? Wake him up. Wake him up. Christ has been in the boat the whole time, just waiting for you to put him in control of the storm. So stop trying to do it on your own. Stop trying to do it on your own. And do what? Do what? Just say it once. Just do what? Wake him up. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you so much, God, that you travel with us every step of the way, God. We thank you that in the boat of life, when those storms are there and when they aren't there, Jesus is with us in that moment. And we ask that you would help us to remember that, God. Next time we see a storm approaching, God, help us to wake him up. Help us to get him involved right from the beginning. Help us to not try to muscle through on our own strength, God. Help us to not be paralyzed in fear or any of these other people, God, but instead help us to be smart enough to wake Jesus up and get him involved. We pray this in Jesus' name.